I think Vineet made some interesting comments on the cycles and how it is a very long cycle and you have to be more patient. I think we sit in between. We sit in between of making sure that we are naturally not a 10-year funds. We 10, 12-year funds from a private equity venture capital perspective, we are in between. So we are 4-5-year funds, which gives a lot of transparency from a perspective of LPs to understand the tech ecosystem. Because generally what we can do, we can customize our structure of finance in varied manner. We can possibly structure an investment in 12 months and 4 years, 3.5 years, depending on what the business requires. I fundamentally believe, first from an asset class perspective, to Rohit's point, it's a more regular cash in and out kind of structures of quarterly paid out to investors. But more importantly, I think domestic capital explosion is something this asset class enables. Because there are a lot of families, since you mentioned families, first of all, let's take on that. A lot of families where new generation entrepreneurs are entering, and I think there's a talk going on that the new generation should be creating businesses rather than investing. So how do you create innovative business? You can create innovative business when you partner with the tech ecosystem. You would not be able to come to know from previous generations how to innovate by yourself. So you partner with maybe funds like us, and that's where you get to understand what's happening in the tech ecosystem, what's happening in SaaS, what's happening in electric clean tech, what's happening in consumer, fintech, and the education awareness and the levels increase because you're trying to any which way generate returns which are close to 14-18%, so they are any which ways at par or even better than some of the other instruments. So that sitting in between, especially for the family office new generation coming in, even a consumer, even a family which has a consumer background and the new generation has come in, there's a lot of innovation on consumer companies in India from a perspective of product market fit, new products coming out. Similarly on the, as I said, on the auto side, there are a lot of auto families who are LPs of ours, investors in us, where they believe, okay, if they want to go electric way or want to go renewable way, they can know much more through us because of the fact our portfolio will be well diversified. I think there was yesterday also a point made from a perspective of creating more domestic funds and raising capital which is more domestic oriented. We propel that because we'll partner with Vineet's portfolio companies and Evolvent's portfolio companies and much beyond. And that intelligence of then circulating knowledge, and I would like to now frame it as knowledge capital between the ecosystem makes us unique, right? That knowledge capital of saying what's happening, if you're talking about consumer, which are the best upcoming trends? If you're talking about electric, which are the, within electric, is it the last mile or is it the OEM, which is a better segment to invest from a perspective of returns or what we are seeing on grounds? So I think besides the return, Rohit, which you mentioned, that people don't have to invest for 10 years, they're in between 4-5 years, that knowledge becomes interesting for unlocking our domestic capital. As of now, we spoke about public market exits. There has to be exits to strategic investors. One of the ways venture capital community will take exits will be strategic buyers. And who will be the strategic buyers? It will be these families whose new generation have come in and they'll acquire businesses, which is happening. One of our companies recently got an investment from Hero MotoCorp Euler Motors, right? Because Hero MotoCorp wanted to go in that trajectory and they believe Euler has done a cycle or curve of learning of their own. So I think exit can be in varied forms. Our truest form of exit comes in when we speak about public markets, which is the last mile exit. There has to be granular or midway exits also, especially for early stage venture capital funds. Private equity exits are different exits. That's traditionally for public markets. So I think domestic pool of capital unlocking is what the asset class does, and that's how our stride way of working is to work very closely with these promoters, including banks, insurance companies, because for them it's a stable source of capital. They can dip into the tech ecosystem again through us, and similarly family office. So it's a knowledge capital which we transmit, which is easier to do because you're sector agnostic, you're stage agnostic. So you can pass on some of that information and understanding.
Yeah, understood. Arvind, back to you. Tell me maybe for the group, as you think through your list of companies which you would want to represent, taking them to public markets, for example, what do you think are the most exciting attributes today for companies which you think would be well received by capital markets, especially from the new age lot?
Sure. look, why they want new, let us put ourselves in the shoes of the public market investors, all the funds, domestics and foreign institutional included. They want the big delta. They want, which is a company which could give me a 25-30% kind of a return. Our nifty EPS growth last year was in single digits, but on an average is around mid-teens. So unless there is a multiple re-rating, your returns are going to be around in mid-teens. So basically, this is the alpha stock. So that is one part of the equation. The other part of the equation, what are they looking at? They are looking at predictable business models. The biggest thing for the tech companies is not just their ability to hyperscale. So there are many companies which grow 30%, 50%, some doubling in size as well. What they lack is the predictability of the business. With what certainty they can guide the investors. What investors, public market investors in particular, hate is nasty surprises. So why investors loved Infosys? Why investors loved HDFC Bank? Because it was kind of clockwork. You just had to clock 20% year-on-year growth. So that degree of predictability is something which public market investors love, and that is something which the companies which are going public are kind of aligning themselves to. Second is that there is quite a bit of requirement on corporate governance. In the private domain, the requirement is not as stringent as what is there in the public domain. Every single action, the way you talk, and the entire management team that you have, the finance team, secretarial team that you have, there are quarterly filings that you have to do. So that is basically a reset from the, mindset perspective. And then finally, they don't want a 0 to 1 game. VCs are kind of comfortable for the 0 to 1 and 1 to infinity journeys. The public market investors don't want that. They want, the events which could potentially disrupt the entire sector to be behind them. So they want high degree of certainty. That apart, obviously investors are looking at the market leaders. Sector after sector, what we are seeing is that the tech-based companies are having a 10x better solution than their incumbents, and they are consistently gaining share. And this we are seeing it in SaaS, we are seeing it in consumer tech, we are seeing it in B2B amongst others. So every sector is kind of opening up and investor appetite is strong. And definitely the capital gravitates towards a market leader who have pricing power, who have demonstrated profitability, and have some credible route of operating leverage playing out. Basically, in short, investors don't want leap of faith, they want high degree of predictability.
No, absolutely, I agree. Vineet, you keep all of us honest. So let me ask you, you and I both raise fair amount of capital outside of India. We deal with currency, we deal with emerging market risk, we deal with idiosyncratic risk that in India may have, for example. Monsoons, for example, when we talk to some of our foreign LPs, they got quite surprised that you bring up that as a reason why things don't get delivered. We had a bad monsoon, we had a good monsoon, we have Navratras, we have this, we have that.
Returns, unfortunately, they had a big fall. And I think if you take everything off, if I'm a US LP, the first thing that I really want is stability in our policies. Taxation. They want stable taxation. They don't want volatility. They don't want new things being introduced, surprises being introduced. Across anything, so whether it is financial services, whether it is technology, whether it is outsourcing, anything, they want consistency of policy. Surprises in policy scares the investors the most, more so if the entrepreneur has built a successful company and suddenly you see complete liquidation of value because either something was not clear or the regulator had allowed things to actually continue and then had suddenly taken a very strong position. And this has happened. India has seen, we saw a serious challenge emerging in fintech not very long back. We saw serious challenge emerging in gaming not very long back. And it has happened across non-banking finance and others as well. those surprises, the LP is willing to live with a failure, not willing to live with a good company actually losing its mojo just because activity took place which nobody has the control. And so stability in the policy system, and stability in governance, and consistency in policy are the three things that they seriously look for, and that's what they fear. I think India is doing reasonably well in the macros. I don't think so macro is a challenge. Our problem is India is so complex on a nuance side that what is gushed over in the macros is the minefield that India is otherwise for an entrepreneur. So most entrepreneurs are here in spite of everything and not because we are very supportive in that sense, and therefore capital takes a long time to come back. And that's the second part of it. I mean, just to take the last 30 years, 3.5% rupee devaluation. So if you want to give 10% return, you have to deliver 14% in Indian rupees to actually just give 10% dollar return. Now, 10% dollar return, these guys have been delivering much higher than that on a consistent basis. I mean, if you look at Sensex performance, roughly 15% would not be. For a venture fund to deliver 10% is humanly very, very difficult. For all the claim, it's just very difficult for venture fund on a portfolio basis. I mean, I have companies which have taken from zero to IPO and I have delivered 110% IRR and 78% dollar IRR. But what did we do as a portfolio? That's where our challenge is. And that is actually glossed over into the chase for unicorns. So unicorn is one delivery, but what happened to the portfolio? And that's where I think our challenge is. The second question was around
public versus privates.
Yeah, so I personally think for the interim, the public is winning. Private has to really work very closely both with the government on one side to get the policies being very consistent and the entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneur needs to understand money is not a right. It is an obligation and you have to create returns. It is your obligation as much as mine, and so both of us have to work together. A lot of entrepreneurs believe we are the cheerleaders for them. Unfortunately, we are actually going to have a healthy skepticism relationship with you, simply because we have to exit while you want to continue to build for yourself. And the third thing which India is still coming to terms with is entrepreneurs becoming a serial entrepreneur. I think that's the right way to go, especially if you raise venture capital. So if you do all these three things, we might be competing with them. Our ideal position should be 25% rupee return, which roughly takes you to 20% dollar return. Then we will look worthwhile, because with the beta that we bring in, that is where we actually have something more to offer. I'll stop here.
Well, I've been told we have time for one last question, and Ishpreet, you're the lucky one here. So if I could just maybe put some concluding thoughts, and I won't specifically talk about venture debt here, but you see the entire ecosystem. I mean, you're a lender to many of these businesses. You're also, through your structure, end up becoming an equity investor through your warrants. So tell me, as you look at the portfolio that you have today, much of it with some of us, with so many other sponsors within the system, tell me, what do you think amongst your own portfolio, which sectors do you think have consistently been the outperformers? Where have you been able to generate consistent credit returns, as well as also your equity warrants delivering the best cash-on-cash outcomes? We've got maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, so
I'll try. Yeah. So actually, I think it's first principle approach. The three sectors which we have invested the most, which has given us returns, are fintech, consumer, and clean tech. And there are logical reasons. If you see, all three are based on fundamental premise. We are the largest population in the world. We like consumer products. We like to use our Instagram. We like to go on the social apps. We want to try new products. We are not, as of now, as much loyal to new products. We are willing to innovate. So that makes rise to new consumer companies. Hence, that sector has remained in vogue and been important. Second is, if you see, both are linked to the government infrastructure. And first is the fintech sector out of the government infrastructure. If you see the layer of GST, Aadhaar, and the enablements which has been done by Vineet mentioned about Nandan's team, etc., and the infra which has been got created for us to transact seamlessly, which we do not find even in developed countries, makes fintech very appealing. You create products on top of that, whether you're creating lending products or non-lending products. So in fact, we just exited a company which we had invested 2.5, 3 years back, which is a platform which propels fixed income instruments called UB recently. And the reason why they've got success because they have been able to get everything on technology over a period of time in a platform manner. Similarly, Perfios. There are a lot of companies who are non-lending tech companies who have come and enabled that. And similarly on the lending side. So on top of the government infrastructure, you're trying to create something. And clean tech, as I said, if you see the government's focus, whether it was yesterday's discussion or previous, it's been always talking about innovation on semiconductor, electric, how India is going towards new form factors, right? All of that has resulted into a lot of startups which has come in. EV has been a certain wave. We have been trying to go away from dependence of oil, and electric has become important. At the same time, the infrastructure around that and now just extending that towards circular economy has become important. So these three sectors have remained important. And in the same breath, look, just to complete that thought of mine, since we have also tried raising external capital, I think when you talk about investments in India, there has to be an excitement for someone to invest. Because ultimately they are financial investors. Unless you're talking about DFI money, which is impact money, which has come in the most. But if you're talking about financial returns, you are first of all against 3.5% in day one because of the currency element. Then sitting out of US, you're not sure what's happening on ground in India. So, and there can be an extension governance element, right? So you have to solve, and then you solve for the industry, which industry you have to invest, which thesis you have to invest. So that's why I came back on the first point in the first question's answer. You have to rely on domestic capital, and you have to rely on government innovation to build on top of that. That's low hanging comparatively, to make sure the returns get generated, which we have generated out of our wallets.
Got it. Thank you. Well, we're, I think, way beyond the time we were given. I wanted to thank all three of you for obviously lasting the day and making yourself very, very interesting to this audience here. Appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you and have a
for the same
lovely
energy.
evening, everyone.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
I am Madhusudan Rao. I am CEO of Atal Incubation Center at CCMB, which has been formed by CCMB some 7 years ago. And our primary job is to encourage startups in life sciences and life sciences, especially biotechnology and medical technologies. So far we have been able to support 160 companies, and more have been incubated with us. Hopefully these companies will go out and have a social impact that is much more valuable. The Startup Conclave has been organized by the 3 institutes of CSR in Hyderabad to showcase their engagements with the industry and also their engagement with the startups. One of the driving factors to initiate such an activity is to bring in all the stakeholders, especially from the industry, and expose them to the kind of discoveries that are getting made in these laboratories, and also the kind of products and processes these startups are developing. So it's a kind of a 2-day event, which is a kind of a mixer between various stakeholders in any development of any company. So one of the driving motive for this conference is to bring in a synergy between various organizations, so that today's technologies are mostly interdisciplinary. So can we have a more closer working relationship between at the level of projects, so that more effectively a solution can be brought, including different disciplines at one place. So this is a starting point for such an activity to go forward, and I think it's an important initiative to in that direction. It's the way the whole world is going, and the interdisciplinary approaches to solve a problem, where the problem becomes central, not the kind of how you solve it. Okay, any solution can be made if the problem is solved. So that is the kind of message they wanted to bring it up by initiating an event like this. Thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
We've done about 900 startups. We've invested about 1,400 crores. We have about 5,000 investors on our Angel AIF. And my team actually, along with a lot of other people today, have curated the entire Maharathi Challenge. And, just picking up a leaf from yesterday's conversation of the Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal, is that we had the highest number of applications in deep tech and AI. So just kind of bringing that up, because I think there is a lot of misconception that India does not have enough deep tech companies today. But with that, I'll give the mic over to Vivek.
Hi, thank you. I'm Vivek. I'm general partner at Samved VC. We are an early stage US-based fund which is investing in India. And our core thesis is that India needs to improve the productivity. So anything which helps people improve the productivities of our interests. So that's what we focus on. I've been an active angel investor for the last 10-15 years. I'm very active on the Let's Venture platform. And I had a large group of syndicate behind me, and some of us have come together to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahavir.
Hi, I'm Mahavir. I've been angel investing for 13-14 years. Founded Rajasthan Angels, Thai India Angels, and now doing my own fund, investing in idea and early stage companies 0 to 1. Thank you.
I am Vibhur. I'm part of a fund called Capital to Be. It's an $80 million fund. And we're largely investing in science and tech companies, early stage.
Hi, I'm Vikram Vedyanathan. I lead a fund called Z47. We were called Matrix Partners India before. We manage roughly $1.5 billion in India and invest at early stages, usually check sizes of $4 to $5 million to start with. We also have an early stage platform which is an angel syndicate called DVC, where we do much smaller checks of $100,000 and so on. We're the first investors in the Ola group of companies, including Ola Electric, Razorpay. I know the Captain Fresh founder was just here, Off Business and so on.
So I'm going to dive straight in. I think a lot of people want to understand how do you get the first check after the coffee you have with the investor. But Vivek, you are a 0 to 1 investor, and you actually have taken a lot of bets at very early stages. Tell us, how do you build conviction when you meet the founder without a product, without any market at that point of time?
So I think for people like me, the journey starts much before we have the meeting. We already have certain thesis in mind. We keep ourselves informed, and based on that, we are on the lookout for the right founders who would solve that problem. So chances are very high that when we are meeting the founders, we already have a thesis in that domain. And then if we resonate with the founder's vision and what he's trying to do, so that's the bet we take. So at our stage, we are not looking so much at traction or the revenue or anything like that. It's basically, if we have conviction in that space, and if we find that we resonate with the founder's vision, we like the founder, so that chemistry is there. So what I'm trying to say is that more often than not, we already have a thesis around what he is trying to do, and then we come in at that early stage. We don't have too much to go as far as data is concerned.
Okay. So I'm going to now go to Mahavir because I want to bust some of the myths which we have about, not enough entrepreneurship in tier 2 cities. And, Mahavir, you come from Jaipur, and I think Jaipur has probably seen some of the best exits in the ecosystem today, right? So tell us a little bit more of what don't we see or what don't we understand. And you've been in that space for a long time, right? So tell us, how has it evolved? And where is the kind of exit coming from a city like Jaipur?
See, I have always been professing the fact that the tier 2, tier 3 cities in India have a much better opportunity for startups to be in, with cost of living, quality of life, etc., and overheads being low. But I think Jaipur has been an anomaly because the ecosystem has come together and evolved. We as Rajasthan Angel started in 2000, TIE started in 2002, Angel in 2011. And we were only investing in Rajasthan-based startups for the first 3-4 years. And then the government picked up from 2015-16 onwards. And now we're still working in sync with each other, and we are getting HNIs and ultra HNIs to convert to investors. We're educating them, we're working with incubators. So I think the ecosystem has to come together, and the fact that it's close to Delhi, very easy to get into and get out of, was one other reason. The other reason I think Jaipur or Rajasthan has inherently is dhanda. We don't worry about the top line as business people. We need to be very secure on what we spend, how we spend. So we are very, very frugal with the fundraisers that have happened in the startups in Rajasthan. We've not gone overboard. The fact that we are sitting put in Jaipur and saving money in itself is a proof to that. So I think it's absolutely technology, idea, passion, everything works, but I think bottom line is very, very critical. And we've seen that through tough times in the last 5 or 6 years. So I think Jaipur has proved beyond doubt that you can scale up and be profitable. And that's what's advantage Jaipur.
So proximity to a larger city as well as somebody like, Mahavir there. Because I think you need the champions in the ecosystem, right? Absolutely. You need someone who's committed for a longer time.
You have to, every ecosystem has to be branded, and brand ambassadors are very, very critical. Otherwise, you don't come in the news, and you just stay put and stay quiet. So I think it's very important to market yourselves. And Jaipur as a city, all of us collectively as investors have marketed well and consistently at every level. So I think that's an advantage too.
Yeah. So now coming to Vibhor, you have a very interesting title on LinkedIn which says Science and Tech Investor. And since we are talking about early stage, and off stage you talked about having made 30 investments, tell us as a deep tech investor, how do you decide when there is no product, when there is very little, because deep tech is a long game, right? We all understand it requires more patient capital. Talk a little bit about, if I'm a deep tech investor as a founder, how do I pitch to Vibhor, and what would make him write the check to me?
So a couple of things, one, I've been a techie for most of my life, right? And I've been doing investing only for the last 5 years. So it's sort of organic for me to look at the science and tech piece first. So I have a thesis. So the kind of founders I'm looking for is one, like Vivek said, who are in line with the thesis. But I'm more intrigued by the founders who are challenging that thesis, right? And I'll read a lot of science and tech journals to understand what's happening in the world. And I love the 60s and the 70s, the hippie culture, because a lot of brilliant papers were written then, which are now becoming plausible and implementable because of the advancements in hardware and software alike. So one is, are people looking at a problem that is worth solving, right? Because a lot of deep tech founders also have a solution-first approach. Hey, I did my thesis in this subject, I went deep in this, and I think this is awesome, and I'm building a company around it, right? I'd rather that the founder looking at a problem first, and whether or not the solution fits the glove, etc., right? One is that. Second is, will the science work or not? Because the first part of failure is the science won't work, right? And how far will that happen down the line? And can we as early stage investors carry the company till then, when there is a product in sight? And then comes the challenge of commercialization, revenue, etc., which is a far cry in the early days,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little more complex than what you're trying to tell us. And I think, we have to just kind of start probably meeting more deep tech founders as investors so that you're able to evaluate. Like I was on the jury of the deep tech and the AI panel, and almost 50% of the companies we kind of marked them as not deep tech. So I think founders like to put that label, but when you go one level deeper, you're not building a deep tech company. And I think that is important as a founder, not to fall into the wrong category, right? Probably if that startup had applied in a different category, they might have been shortlisted, right?
So one point is there a distinguishable IP there or not?
Yes. Now coming to Vikram, and we spoke about DVC and the pre-seed and the angel network you're building. I'm just curious if you can talk to us about, how do you actually identify a pre-seed company? And I want to go through that question again and again because I think each of us will have a very different insight into actually how do I go from coffee to check?
Sure. See, we actually, on DVC, we actually work with a network of angels. And each of you, as you go through your journeys, I'm amazed, like each of you are super nodes in your network, right? And there are certain pockets that you're very well known in. And I think for any sort of pre-seed founder, it's actually great to go find that super node who's your champion in the ecosystem. And at least to reach large funds like us, that is actually the best route. And to have that champion and that super node. Now, personally for me, when I meet a founder, what actually works for me, the first is actually, like Vibhor was saying, start with that pain point. There is a deep pain point in the world that you've identified, and that it is not a pain point restricted to 5 people, but actually it affects a large set of people in some way. That's the first thing. And putting that shared context, a lot of the times the VC will not, or the investor will not have that shared context that you have on how big a pain point that is, and bring that pain point to life. That's usually how that conversation starts. The second is then the unique solution and why they are best suited. Something, right, that has given them some edge, and a lot of founders miss that in that conversation, right? Bringing yourself to that conversation, saying, this is my edge in terms of solving this unique pain point in some way. And then it is, found this pain point, I have this edge, and then paint a picture of the world. Once I'm done, essentially fixing the world, this is what the world will look like. That's sort of the perfect sort of conversation. Through all of that, what I'm looking for is some deep curiosity, a way in which I can see that this person is going to grow very fast, even if they're very young, because that's what you're betting on through that journey. And then some commercial instincts, even if they're a very technical founder, some commercial instincts early on.
So I'm just curious here, because we're talking so much about networking, meeting people, knowing the right people, getting the right introductions. What do you see the difference between a male and a female founder? Like, where are women advantaged or disadvantaged in this entire early stage?
I think the overall trait that you're looking for, more than just networking, is being highly resourceful. Right? The difference between a founder and a manager is founder sets goals and then figures out what resources to get.
Yes.
And this network is one of those resources, right? Sometimes it's capital, sometimes it's network capital, it's just a resource that you're looking to get, and so on. I do think, and my wife is in the room and she leads a very large part of PhonePe. And so I do think that women have certain advantages, but they miss some of the old boys network, which isn't there. So they miss the natural network capital, and they have to fight a little bit harder to actually build that network capital in some way. I think there are communities that are helping, but I do think overall as an ecosystem, a lot more needs to get done.
You're just being polite. I think the women have to work probably a lot more harder, because I think it's still a very bro club culture in investing today, right? There are very few, we are still building that up. And I think times are changing. but I think there is still a long effort.
I would say all female founders in my network, as well as in our angel group and so on, all say that, like you said, you use the word polite, but maybe I don't understand the levels of pain point enough, and I think that is true, right? Because I don't have an intuitive understanding of that. It is true that there is a large gap, but it is true that overall women founders have raised less money. And the evaluations are less. So you can see that it is a problem in the ecosystem.
Yeah, but I think things are also changing, which I always tell my women founders, is that the customer does not know whether it's a male or a female who's built the company, right? So if you can build a product which has customer love, I think you will win the market. I mean, why would investors not invest in a good business, right? I don't think that the bias is so strong today. Right, so I think it is about focusing on this problem market, problem solution, right? Like, what are you trying to build? How are you building the business? I think, and then eventually you will get the attention.
Yeah, so we backed 2 female founders in the recent past. One is Ruchi, who's the founder of Oxizo, and Romita, who's the founder of Foxtail. I would say they just went out and created that network for themselves. They did have the advantage of being from some large networks like McKinsey and IIT, but then they just built on that.
Absolutely. So Vivek, if I were to come back to you, if a founder is pitching, and if you have to walk away from a conversation, what is that one thing which will just say, this is a red flag and I don't want to do this?
See, for me, when I'm investing, what I want is the problem that it's trying to solve and whether you will scale or not. And for me, the scale is basically, can I visualize a repeatable, scalable model that if you're able to solve, there are many such customers that you'll be able to go after. So what happens, especially, and that has happened lately, is that sometimes you get very good founders with very good solutions, but the validation has come from a one-off client which will not be repeatable, scalable. They'll get some validation from a CSR grant, or they will have some thing which has worked with a government, and they feel that gives them the right to win. So, they'll come back and say, we have this product which has been validated because they have got this grant or they have this order from the government, and you go deeper into it and then you realize that though they may be saying that they have certain X amount of revenue, the scalable part of that revenue or the repeatable part of that revenue is minuscule.
So basically some validation of repeatability and moving towards that product.
Yeah, I mean, that is what you need to concentrate on. Don't concentrate on this one-off things and take that as your right to win and start tom-tomming to your investors because I've got this. You fund us. And when you look at the things which is going to be the long grind, you see that the focus is not there, or that is not on their radar, how difficult the life is. So that is something that puts you off. They are going to chase one large customer rather than something which will scale. So that is something that so if somebody comes and says, I have this one customer or this one validation which I find will not be repeatable, that's a red flag for me.
So can we just go across, because I think this is an important point for founders, like what is just kosher and don't come to me.
So I'll tell you one red flag that I have is that actually an investor told me to do this, or a VC said this, right?
Yes.
And because it happens, and I understand that as founders you go to VC meetings and you think, hey, this investor actually likely knows best. But do not outsource your judgment to investors, because the investor is there for 30 minutes, and usually, and I will say it with all respect to all of our fellow investors, we know a lot less about we know almost next to nothing about your business versus you.
Absolutely.
So actually what you should be really focused on in making decisions is actually your consumer, your customer, what's happening with that product market fit, and bring that insight into the room. So one red flag for me is, when I asked what happened, they said, oh, this investor gave us feedback, so we did this. That is absolutely not what you should be doing.
So this is always an advice or a thought we tell our founders, is that the VC does not know everything, right? And I think a lot of people outside your core team will not know the business as well as you will know it. Vibhor?
Buzzwords.
Yes.
The moment somebody says we are an AI company, I have a null pointer exception. And the other thing is over amplifying the solution in your own head, right? and undermining direct or indirect competitive landscapes.
Yes.
Right. Because everything is very nuanced, and all of a sudden you'll have a left field ball hitting you, and you would not know what to do. So just a very, very deep understanding of the entire landscape is something very essential in my view.
Yeah. Mahavir?
I agree with what everyone said, but in addition to that, it's not one red flag, it's a combination of many red flags. I think not knowing your product, your projections, your numbers, you have to live, breathe, eat, sleep your startup. These guys over-exaggerate and oversell or undersell, whatever. They're clueless when it comes to numbers, and whether an investor has told them or a chartered accountant has told them or someone has told them this is a valuation, they have no justification or reasoning to give when you say, why are you asking for so much of valuation, and why do you need 5 crores or why not 2 crores? They are not sure of where they're going in the next 2-3 years because they've just gathered and mustered things, cut, copy, paste, and heard from people and put everything together. Just because they're raising 5 crores does not make their valuation to be 50 crores.
Yes.
There has to be justification on everything, and not knowing all of that is also a red flag. That means that person is just raising money for the sake of raising money,
yes,
and not for doing the business that he's supposed to be doing.
So for me personally, the red flag is just ethical boundaries, right? I think there are some founders who start with a number in the beginning of the meeting. By the time they've ended the meeting, the numbers have changed, and they are not able to listen, right? So when you tell them something, the reaction is, it's such great feedback, and I love what you're saying, and I'm like, okay, we've just spent 30 minutes today, right? And I think just getting influence and trying to be the pleaser in the meeting, I think those are all just like, you don't want to work with such people in the long term, right?
There's lack of conviction, actually.
Yes, lack of conviction. I think we have like 5 minutes left, so I wanted to open it up for questions, but just one last rapid fire, okay? TAM or team?
Team, any day. Team is much more important because TAM will be decided by how the team executes.
Yeah. What about you, Mahavir?
Oh, obviously. I don't even look at the Sam, Tam, Tom slide at all. I don't care. It's a team.
Yeah. For you, what about product or the idea? Because it is deep tech, right? So I'm still curious, how does early stage happen in deep tech?
The possibility of that idea becoming a product.
Okay, that's great. And about you, single founder or multiple founder teams?
Depends on the stage. It's early founders, then I would say having a couple of founders. There is a thing about running. If you want to run fast, you go alone. If you want to run far, you go together. So
absolutely. But now I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have questions. Can we pass the mic around?
All right. Where do we go?
Keep your questions short because I want to have at least 3 questions.
Yeah, sure. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you identify the right product fit? Whenever you are having a bet with a founder, or maybe you are having a bet with a particular product, so how can you judge in maybe a one-line conversation?
Oh, just by sheer experience. We listen to pitches every single day, and we quickly know what will work, what will not work in a certain idea. So it's very, very quick and very brief for me, at least. I know what I want. I know where I want to invest. I know, in my opinion, what will work or not work. So I'm very quick. Depends based upon experience.
I think if you want to bring it to life, I would say there has to be product love. That some user suddenly is living some part of their life on your product. And it is just palpable, like he said, that user loves your product.
Vivek, you had some
So, I've been an investor, and for me that's the whole question, when has the founder moved from MVP to market fit? And my hack is that if I talk to a founder and he's talking about the features that he's going to add, I know that he's still in the discovery phase. The moment founder starts talking about the customers and expansion, I know that they have found the market fit. So what I've realized the hard way is that when you're talking to the founders, the vocabulary of the founder changes when they're talking to investors if they found the market fit.
Great.
Awesome. That's a great point.
Thank you so much for sharing your answers.
Yeah, one more question because I have one question for the panel at the end.
Hello, my question is regarding legal tech. If a platform is offering online notarizations to the Indian public, so who would be a better fit for to get the investment, the government or because a lot of groups are showing interest, but who do we sit with in these cases?
Legal tech? Did you say legal tech?
Yes.
And what the question was?
Bringing digital notarizations to the general public, to the NBFCs, to the government, to the everything.
So my advice is always keep the government as the next option once you find your real customer.
Last option, sorry,
Last
not next.
option.
Well, the platform is already online and we are just searching for the investors. So government is the first option to go to?
I would not recommend that. I think you have to find customers who will pay quickly, right? Because there is a process of getting approved through the government machinery.
Yeah, we have already done it.
So then you should go through that. Whatever works best for you as a founder. So coming back to this, the last question I have, since we spoke about going to the government, and this question is specifically for Vibhor, right? If we were to create a process where we say in the next 5 years we want to strengthen the deep tech and AI ecosystem of India, because that's where we believe value creation will happen. I actually think the last 10 years what has happened is great, because it has created better economy for the people who would not have access to capital, right? So in terms of, all the food sharing apps and all the ride sharing apps, all that has actually created employment. It has started to build the flywheel of the economic momentum in the country, right? But if I were to look at the next 5 years and if I were to take one proposal to the government, Vibhor, you have to represent us today.
Putting me in a spot. Bunch of things actually. First thing is what you just said. Change the investor sentiment about government as a customer.
Yes.
Right? Most deep tech companies that I meet, government would probably be the first and only customer that they will have. There is no running away from that. Defense. Most of the innovation in the West started from defense. The internet came from defense, right? In the US and Europe, people are happy that you're working with the government because that means it'll see through.
Yes.
Commercialization will happen.
Yes.
It isn't the case in India. So first thing that has to change is that. Second thing I believe is that the way we have a PhD done in our country has to change. Right? There is basic research, there is applied research, and there is user-based research. I think a lot of emphasis has to be on applied research and user-based research. Which are the problems worth solving? You don't need citations in papers, you need PhD to entrepreneurship pathways.
Got it.
The third thing is we need a blended stack of capital. If you look at deep tech, Series A and Series B beyond, nobody's picking up these companies for the heavy lifting.
Yes.
Show me traction, show me, commercialization. If there was any commercialization, they wouldn't need venture capital so much, right? And deep tech is not something like your B2B and B2C, pump in more money and things will happen, right? So therefore you need a blended stack of capital where you have equity, you have debt, you have MSME kind of loans that the government provides, because these are again, after a point in time, they will mimic the classic manufacturing paradigm, most of these companies. I mean, top 3 in my view.
And just again an observation, because I was on the AI deep tech jury, 30% of the companies were bootstrapped who actually came to us, and they've done pretty good traction. Right, so I think there is that momentum building up, but anybody has closing thoughts here on the panel?
I share Vibhor's, I would say, historical pessimism on where the government is in terms of as a customer and so on, but we've seen some of this change, right? And I think we are the first investor in Ola Electric, which is essentially started as a EV play, then became a battery play and so on. I don't think that could have been possible without the debt capital balance sheet, and I think it's very important what Vibhor said. As a founder, you have to think of not just equity funding, but multiple other ways of building your balance sheet in order to go after this opportunity. But then the PLI opportunity showed up. That's what made that entire thing show up, right? So as a founder, to think of these different capital bases, but I do think, I used to be there saying government is the last customer, but what I've seen with, for example, the payments ecosystem actually now starting to get all the subsidies on time on a quarterly basis, as well as the EV ecosystem starting to happen, I think some of this is changing. But I also work for an Israeli startup. everything came out of defense. We don't have that talent density and ecosystem.
You have anything to add here?
I mean, it might have come out of defense, but drone tech was killed in India because of dependence on government. I think we were lagging behind. Blockchain, with the stigma of crypto, is kind of stuck because of all of these things, and there's so much that blockchain can do. I think I somehow feel that from land records to birth, death, whatever degrees, there's so much that the government can help enable deep tech, but I don't see that happening for some reason or the other. And that is where, as an early stage investor, I become wary of a startup or a deep tech company that will depend on a government or governments across the world. So it is a challenge. I don't know if these 3 points will help solve it, but a lot of shift has to happen.
Anything to add, Vivek?
Yes, I work very closely with the incubators at various IITs, from IIT Madras to IIT Kanpur, and now even Plaksha universities. And I think that thing is changing, because deep tech, if you're talking about the startups, at the end of the day, the first research has to happen. It's only once you have that, what the fundamental research is there, that will translate into some kind of product. So I think that is changing. I work very closely with IIT Kanpur, and some of the startups there in the deep tech are really interesting. We are working with Plaksha also. We have this Center of Excellence. They have the concept of grand challenges, which we are, where the deep research is going on to identify the right problems and solving that. So that, I think the university will have to be a big part of the research, the deep tech ecosystem.
Yeah, so just as a closing note, I'm part of the organizing committee of Startup Mahakumbh, and I've seen the immense effort, selflessly, which everybody has put in, because we believe that this decade belongs to India, right? Absolutely. And it's great that we are having these very difficult conversations and challenging each other, instead of, all of us coming and appreciating each other and not talking about the issues that matter. So thank you for all of you for taking the time out, and it has been a pleasure moderating this session.
Thank you, Chan.
Thank you, Chan.
Informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
Day of Startup Mahakumbh 2025. My name is Sahil Bajaj, and I'll be the host for the day, along with my co-host Mehak Dhawan in the house. I'm overjoyed to see so many bright faces. The past 2 days have been incredible, of fresh ideas and brilliant insights that light up India's startup scene. So can we please have 3 cheers before we begin for Startup Mahakumbh 2025. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! Yes, we'll keep up the same energy throughout the day, and it's time to introduce the high-spirited panelists on stage with us. Ladies and gentlemen, our first session is about startups driving innovation and R&D for Viksit Bharat 2047 that we are talking. We launch into startups driving innovation and R&D for Viksit Bharat 2047. Our brilliant moderator, Shri Sanjeev Kumar Gupta, CEO of Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, KDEM, will lead this deep dive. And we would like to thank Mr. Gupta for joining us here.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to meet our powerhouse panelists. So let me take a pleasure and invite them on stage, and definitely I want all your claps as we invite them on stage. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Vikram Gupta, founder of IVY Group. Thank you so much for igniting fresh ideas with your innovative spirit. We also have Mr. Naganand Doraswamy, managing partner and founder of Ideas Spring Capital. Thank you so much for nurturing dreams and brilliant startups from the ground up. We also have Dr. Arvind Gupta, CEO of Digital India Foundation. Sir, your efforts in driving digital change are truly appreciated. And we also have Shri Paneerselvam Madan Gopal, CEO of Meti Startup Hub. Thank you for leading in passion and of course your vision.
Thank you, Mehak. And of course, our moderator, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Gupta again. Sanjeev ji, what a fresh morning and high-spirited panelists, as I can see already on the stage. We are surely looking forward for this panel discussion. Everyone, can we just make some noise one more time? All right, let's begin the day. Let's begin the day.
Over to our moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are you charged up in the morning today? Lovely. You have this high spirit panelist, which is the investor also here sitting, the bureaucrats sitting here, the policy makers, the largest hub of the startups incubators are sitting here on the panel. And we're looking at a question mark on what? The question mark on R&D led innovations and entrepreneurship coming out from the country. Well, हमें बड़ी खुशी है कि आज 1,25,000 प्लस स्टार्टअप्स हमारे पास हैं इंडिया में रजिस्टर्ड, 110 यूनिकॉर्न्स हैं। ताली बनती है इसके लिए। अगर 110 यूनिकॉर्न्स हैं और वो इतना अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, तो फिर हमारा जो देश है वो 1% जीडीपी R&D पे क्यों टिका हुआ है? जबकि यूएस जो है वो करीब 3% है और इजराइल जो है तकरीबन 5% R&D पे काम करता है। और उस R&D बजट के बेसिस पे इतने बेहतरीन प्रोडक्ट्स निकल के बाहर आते हैं, जहां पर आपको लगता है कि अगर हमें कहीं से कुछ कॉपी करना है तो शायद हम वहां लेके चले जाएंगे। और अगर ऐसा है तो कल एक जिक्र हो रहा था कि भारत का जो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सिस्टम डेवलप होगा 2047 में, वो कैसा होगा, एक वर्ड निकालना था। तो एक पैनलिस्ट ने वहां बात छेड़ी और उसमें बोला गया कि भारत का एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इकोसिस्टम और इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम, अरविंद जी, ऐसा होगा जैसे ध्रुव तारा, जो पूरे वर्ल्ड को दिशा दिखाएगा कि एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इनोवेशन होता क्या है। तो अगर ऐसा है ना, होना है, तो मुझे इनसे कुछ सवालात करने हैं, और वो सवालात को जिस तरह से करने हैं कि बड़े शॉर्ट एंड क्रिस्प आंसर्स, but I want to understand that if really we want to make an R&D led innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, how do we do this? So my first question to Arvind ji is you. हम देश सोच रहे हैं कि $10 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी हमारी पैदा होगी हमारे देश से। उसमें अगर हम स्टार्टअप्स का योगदान देखें और हम देखें कि उसमें अकेला स्टार्टअप का योगदान नहीं बल्कि R&D लेड इनोवेशंस का योगदान कैसे होगा और क्या आप उसमें कितने पॉजिटिव हो कि वो होके रहेगा?
संजीव, थैंक यू। मैं इंग्लिश में बात करूंगा, हिंदी इंग्लिश, बिकॉज आई थिंक वी हैव द फुल भारत रिप्रेजेंटेड हियर। देश के हर कोने से महाकुंभ में लोग आए हैं और महाकुंभ का तात्पर्य यही होता है कि महाकुंभ, ये स्टार्टअप का महाकुंभ है। प्रयागराज में आपने देखा ही क्या हुआ है। देखिए, सबसे पहली थीम जो आपने पूछी R&D, इसका थोड़ा सा हमारा जो पैनल डिस्कशन जो टॉपिक लिखा था वो उल्टा होना चाहिए। R&D लेड innovation for Viksit Bharat 2047, not the startups other way around. In the value chain, R&D has to come first. But मैं इससे पहले I want to make a very important statement. I think there is a lot of noise and media around what is India doing in startups. See, we are doing everything. That's a very important thing. In India, we don't live in an or world. We live in an and world. And world means what? We do startups which are frugal, R&D, deep tech, innovation. We do startups, 9 years ago when we started Startup India, the Prime Minister launched it in 16 January 2016, we had 400 odd startups in India. आज भारत के अंदर 1,60,000 प्लस स्टार्टअप्स हैं, 120 यूनिकॉर्न हैं, हर तरह के हैं, 5,000 उसमें डीप टेक भी हैं, R&D लेड भी हैं। IIT मद्रास चले जाएं तो आपको लगेगा सिर्फ R&D लेड है। भारत इतना बड़ा देश है कि हर कोने में एक कंट्री समा जाती है। तो वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स गोइंग ऑन। हमें सेलिब्रेट कंज्यूमर टेक को भी करना है, फिनटेक को भी करना है। फिनटेक में वी आर द लीडर, 57% ऑफ द ग्लोबल रियल टाइम पेमेंट्स हैपन इन इंडिया। वी आर द ओनली कंट्री इन द वर्ल्ड where UPI, ONDC are being fronted by the global giants, whether it is Meta, Google, Amazon. They all use our technology. So why should we shy in saying that we are also innovation-led? We have to become more. We have to change gears. Honorable Minister ने भी ये बात कही. उनका क्या तत्पर्य था? What he wants to communicate is we should applaud ourselves. We have gained a lot of capital. We have gained a lot of skills, mentorship, and talent. And a lot of capital has been generated by the success of round 1. But in Startup 2.0, keep building on round 1, but also focus on round 2. And in round 2, you change gears. And here, deep tech, R&D-led startups also need to play an important role. The number from 4,000 should become 100,000.
Wow. एक्सेलेंट, थैंक यू अरविंद जी. मुझे लगता है कि अगर 1 लाख डीप टेक टैलेंट, डीप टेक स्टार्टअप्स पैदा होते हैं हमारे देश से, तो फिर तो ये टॉपिक डिस्कशन ही होगा. उसके बाद फिर तो ये होगा कि बताओ कि उसमें आईपीएस की कितने निकल रहे हैं, उसका कमर्शलाइजेशन कितना हो रहा है. अब मदन गोपाल जी, इसमें आपका क्या विचार होगा कि $10 ट्रिलियन इसमें कितना निकल सकते हैं लोग? इन ट्रिलियन डॉलर्स में बताओ आप मुझे.
I think, Sandeep, if I can just go back one step and share, you asked me a very, very pertinent question. Why is that R&D spend so low in the country? I think it's low, but more than what startups can do, actually change of a little bit of a mindset from instant. We are living in the world of instant gratification, right? I think instant success, instant growth is what probably driving a lot of young startups today. If I were to kind of look at saying if the startups can look at little bit more deferred gratification, deferred success, and build for long term, that will drive them in the R&D led, product led innovation, which can actually change the way great companies come out of Indian startup ecosystem. I think we have to congratulate ourselves, in building a phenomenal width. 160,000 startups in the country is no less feat, but we have built amazing width. Now it's time to build depth, right? It's fundamentally strong, sustainable, product-led companies that are coming out of India. I think that is the change. Is to see every founder. I know I've interacted with founders in the last 5-7 years, and every founder has a product idea and a product dream, and they will do services for cash flow.
Got it.
Right? Over a period of time, what happens is the services business is the real, they keep the distractor from the product-led business, right? They kind of keep this going and it grows, and sometimes they lose. They say, okay, इसको park कर देते हैं और हम services में focus करते हैं क्योंकि वो instant cash flow company को दे रहा है. That temptation is what I would urge the young founders and entrepreneurs to resist and stay in focus and invested in the product-led innovation and product-led R&D-led company. That will change the whole perspective, and that's where organizations like Startup Hub comes in, where we are here to facilitate you with certain amount of patient capital, certain amount of support system, mentoring support system, ecosystem support, and that's where we are very keen. So don't take the eye off your product dream and the product idea for some short-term cash flow stay. That's where the change happens.
अगर हेडलाइन बनाना हो मुझे कल की न्यूज की, तो अरविंद जी और आपसे एक निवेदन है. 10% जीडीपी कंट्रीब्यूशन आएगा 2030 में बाय दी स्टार्टअप्स इकोसिस्टम प्लेयर्स इन इंडिया 2030 में. अगर ऐसा है तो आप ये बताओ कि कितना $1 ट्रिलियन जो है वो R&D लेड इनोवेशन आएगा. नंबर 2,
संजीव जी, आप जैसे मित्रों के कारण ऑलरेडी इंडिया इज एस्पायरिंग टू बी $1 ट्रिलियन डिजिटल इकोनॉमी.
करेक्ट.
$1 ट्रिलियन की डिजिटल इकोनॉमी आउट ऑफ द $5 ट्रिलियन. करेक्ट. उसके अंदर हमारा विजन होना चाहिए कि जब 10 ट्रिलियन के पहुंचे तो वो 10%, जो अभी हमारा 20% है, वो वैसे ही 25-30% हो जाए, तो हमारा $3 ट्रिलियन का टोटल डिजिटल इकोनॉमी हो, और उसके अंदर $1 ट्रिलियन क्यों नहीं डीप टेक स्टार्टअप से आने.
Lovely. Big hand applause for $1 ट्रिलियन R&D-led innovations ecosystem developing from the country as we go for a $10 ट्रिलियन economy. एक क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं आपसे, इसको ठीक है, आपने बोला कुछ टेक के ऊपर काम हो रहा है. नागन जी और विक्रम जी, आपके लिए क्वेश्चन है. दिस क्वेश्चन फॉर यू इज, if in last year in 2023 roughly $5 billion has been raised by the deep tech startup players. Numbers could be 4.8 to 5 or 5.1. These are numbers which has been raised as a fund. what do you see that in coming years, which are the sectors, which are the areas where you will find the really innovation on R&D based product development is going to happen? Which are those fields, which are those sectors?
So first of all, thank you so much. I think जो एनर्जी मैं यहाँ देख रहा हूँ महाकुंभ में, it's mind-boggling. And I've been visiting all these stalls, and it's amazing to see the quality of startups. So big congratulations to the government. Arvind ji obviously is part of the organizing committee. I mean, he's behind this whole thing. So thank you so much, Arvind ji, for this thing. And I think big congratulations. So I think that's a big thing. Now, coming to your point, so broadly speaking, if you look at the emerging tech and the deep tech, very clearly we are seeing a few areas which are gaining huge traction. Now, space tech, defense tech, and of course AI, and now we are seeing semiconductors as a big area. Historically, India has not been very, as compared to US and China, who've been investing a lot of capital in these areas. India is very new in the game. But as Arvind ji rightly said, I mean, if you look at the inflection which has happened over time, 400 startups in 2016, and we're talking about that number growing. And I personally believe next 10 years, minimum 500 unicorns will get added more. And I think just a unicorn, if you look at the 180 odd unicorns today in the country, we're talking about $385 billion valuation. If you purely look at the valuation metric. And look at the kind of value which is getting created exponentially. And I think a substantial part of that is going to come from deep tech and emerging tech areas. And space tech में आप देख ही रहे हैं जो हो रहा है, जो Indian startups now are able to do magic. We've seen Chandrayaan at such a low cost, and India has shown and demonstrated that innovation can happen at a much lower cost. So I think India is very uniquely positioned to not only innovate and show the examples to the world, but also innovate at a very low cost. Correct. I think which is very, very important.
Very nice. So deep tech में आप बात करो, space tech की, defense tech की, and etc. are the areas and sectors. Nagan,
just want to add one perspective to that. See, in product innovation, there will be some startups where a lot more R&D is required, some products where R&D is not that deep. For example, if you look at Grow, the Freshworks, they're all awesome product innovation startups, but the level of R&D might not be as deep. Whereas if you look at other startups that have come off late, whether you're looking at space tech or whatever, right? Skyroot, to name a few, where there is more R&D is required to bring a product to the market. I think there has to be a balance, right? You have a business innovation set of startups which is very important. You need to continue to support it. You have product innovation startups that are not as deep.
Day of Startup Mahakumbh 2025. My name is Sahil Bajaj, and I'll be the host for the day, along with my co-host Mahek Dhawan in the house. I'm overjoyed to see so many bright faces. The past 2 days have been incredible, of fresh ideas and brilliant insights that light up India's startup scene. So can we please have 3 cheers before we begin for Startup Mahakumbh 2025. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! Yes, we'll keep up the same energy throughout the day, and it's time to introduce the high-spirited panelists on stage with us. Ladies and gentlemen, our first session is about startups driving innovation and R&D for Viksit Bharat 2047 that we are talking. We launch into startups driving innovation and R&D for Viksit Bharat 2047. Our brilliant moderator, Shri Sanjeev Kumar Gupta, CEO of Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, KDEM, will lead this deep dive. And we would like to thank Mr. Gupta for joining us here.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to meet our powerhouse panelists. So let me take a pleasure and invite them on stage, and definitely I want all your claps as we invite them on stage. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Vikram Gupta, founder of IVY Group. Thank you so much for igniting fresh ideas with your innovative spirit. We also have Mr. Naganand Doraswamy, managing partner and founder of Ideas Wellspring Capital. Thank you so much for nurturing dreams and brilliant startups from the ground up. We also have Dr. Arvind Gupta, CEO of Digital India Foundation. Sir, your efforts in driving digital change are truly appreciated. And we also have Shri Paneerselvam Madan Gopal, CEO of Meti Startup Hub. Thank you for leading in passion and of course your vision.
Thank you, Mehak. And of course, our moderator, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Gupta again. Sanjeev ji, what a fresh morning and high-spirited panelists, as I can see already on the stage. We are surely looking forward for this panel discussion. Everyone, can we just make some noise? One more time. All right, let's begin the day. Let's begin the day.
Over to our moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are you charged up in the morning today? Lovely. You have this high spirit panelist, which is the investor also here sitting, the bureaucrats sitting here, the policy makers, the largest hub of the startups incubators are sitting here on the panel. And we're looking at a question mark on what? The question mark on R&D led innovations and entrepreneurship coming out from the country. Well, हमें बड़ी खुशी है कि आज 1,25,000 प्लस स्टार्टअप्स हमारे पास हैं इंडिया में रजिस्टर्ड, 110 यूनिकॉर्न्स हैं. ताली बनती है इसके लिए. अगर 110 यूनिकॉर्न्स हैं और वो इतना अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, तो फिर हमारा जो देश है वो 1% जीडीपी आरएनडी पे क्यों टिका हुआ है? जबकि यूएस जो है वो करीब 3% है और इजराइल जो है तकरीबन 5% आरएनडी पे काम करता है. और उस आरएनडी बजट के बेसिस पे इतने बेहतरीन प्रोडक्ट्स निकल के बाहर आते हैं, जहां पर आपको लगता है कि अगर हमें कहीं से कुछ कॉपी करना है तो शायद हम वहां जाके चले जाएंगे. और अगर ऐसा है तो कल एक जिक्र हो रहा था कि भारत का जो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप सिस्टम डेवलप होगा 2047 में, वो कैसा होगा, एक वर्ड निकालना था. तो एक पैनलिस्ट ने वहां बात छेड़ी और उसमें बोला गया कि भारत का एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इकोसिस्टम और इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम, अरविंद जी, ऐसा होगा जैसे ध्रुव तारा, जो पूरे वर्ल्ड को दिशा दिखाएगा कि एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इनोवेशन होता क्या है. तो अगर ऐसा है ना, होना है, तो मुझे इनसे कुछ सवालात करने हैं, और वो सवालात को जिस तरह से करने हैं कि बड़े शॉर्ट एंड क्रिस्प आंसर्स. बट आई वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट इफ रियली वी वांट टू मेक एन R&D led innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, how do we do this? So my first question to Arvind ji is you. हम देश सोच रहे हैं कि $10 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी हमारी पैदा होगी हमारे देश से. उसमें अगर हम स्टार्टअप्स का योगदान देखें और हम देखें कि उसमें अकेला स्टार्टअप का योगदान नहीं बल्कि R&D led innovations का योगदान कैसे होगा, और क्या आप उसमें कितने पॉजिटिव हो कि वो होके रहेगा?
संजीव, थैंक यू. मैं इंग्लिश में बात करूंगा, हिंदी इंग्लिश, बिकॉज आई थिंक वी हैव द फुल भारत रिप्रेजेंटेड हियर. देश के हर कोने से महाकुंभ में लोग आए हैं, और महाकुंभ का तात्पर्य यही होता है कि महाकुंभ, ये स्टार्टअप का महाकुंभ है. प्रयागराज में आपने देखा ही क्या हुआ है. सो देखिए, सबसे पहली थीम जो आपने पूछी R&D, इसका थोड़ा सा हमारा जो पैनल डिस्कशन जो टॉपिक लिखा था वो उल्टा होना चाहिए. R&D led innovation for Viksit Bharat 2047, not the startups other way around. In the value chain, R&D has to come first. But मैं इससे पहले एक I want to make a very important statement. I think there is a lot of noise and media around what is India doing in startups. See, we are doing everything. That's a very important thing. In India, we don't live in an or world. We live in an and world. And world means what? We do startups which are frugal, R&D, deep tech, innovation. We do startups, 9 years ago when we started Startup India, the Prime Minister launched it in 16 January 2016, we had 400 odd startups in India. आज भारत के अंदर 1,60,000 प्लस स्टार्टअप्स हैं, 120 यूनिकॉर्न हैं, हर तरह के हैं. 5,000 उसमें डीप टेक भी हैं, R&D लेड भी हैं. IIT मद्रास चले जाएं तो आपको लगेगा सिर्फ R&D लेड है. भारत इतना बड़ा देश है कि हर कोने में एक कंट्री समा जाती है. तो वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स गोइंग ऑन. हमें सेलिब्रेट कंज्यूमर टेक को भी करना है, फिनटेक को भी करना है. फिनटेक में वी आर द लीडर. 57% ऑफ द ग्लोबल रियल टाइम पेमेंट्स हैपन इन इंडिया. We are the only country in the world where UPI, ONDC are being fronted by the global giants, whether it is Meta, Google, Amazon. They all use our technology. So why should we shy in saying that we are also innovation-led? We have to become more. We have to change gears. Honorable Minister ने भी ये बात कही. उनका क्या तात्पर्य था? What he wants to communicate is we should applaud ourselves. We have gained a lot of capital. We have gained a lot of skills, mentorship, and talent. And a lot of capital has been generated by the success of round 1. But in Startup 2.0, keep building on round 1, but also focus on round 2. And in round 2, you change gears. And here, deep tech, R&D-led startups also need to play an important role. The number from 4,000 should become 100,000.
Wow. Excellent. थैंक यू अरविंद जी. मुझे लगता है कि अगर 1 लाख डीप टेक टैलेंट, डीप टेक स्टार्टअप्स पैदा होते हैं हमारे देश से, तो फिर तो ये टॉपिक डिस्कशन ही होगा. उसके बाद फिर तो ये होगा कि बताओ कि उसमें आईपीएस की कितने निकल रहे हैं, उसका कमर्शलाइजेशन कितना हो रहा है. अब मदन गोपाल जी, इसमें आपका क्या विचार होगा कि $10 ट्रिलियन इसमें कितना निकल सकते हैं लोग? इन ट्रिलियन डॉलर्स में बताओ आप मुझे.
I think, Sandeep, if I can just go back one step and share, you asked me a very, very pertinent question. Why is that R&D spend so low in the country? I think it's low, but more than what startups can do, actually change of a little bit of a mindset from we are living in the world of instant gratification, right? I think instant success, instant growth is what probably driving a lot of young startups today. If I were to kind of look at saying if the startups can look at little bit more deferred gratification, deferred success, and build for long term, that will drive them in the R&D led, product led innovation, which can actually change the way great companies come out of Indian startup ecosystem. I think we have to congratulate ourselves, in building a phenomenal width. 160,000 startups in the country is no less feat, but we have built amazing width. Now it's time to build depth. Right? It's fundamentally strong, sustainable, product-led companies that are coming out of India. I think that is the change is to see every founder. I've interacted with founders in the last 5-7 years, and every founder has a product idea and a product dream, and they will do services for cash flow.
Got it.
Right? Over a period of time, what happens is the services business is the real. They keep the distractor from the product-led business, right? They kind of keep this going, and it grows, and sometimes they lose. They say, okay, इसको park कर देते हैं और हम services में focus करते हैं क्योंकि वो instant cash flow company को दे रहा है. That temptation is what I would urge the young founders and entrepreneurs to resist and stay in focus and invested in the product-led innovation and product-led R&D-led company. That will change the whole perspective. And that's where organizations like Startup Hub comes in, where we are here to facilitate you with certain amount of patient capital, certain amount of support system, mentoring support system, ecosystem support.